Well, hello, Sin Fam! Welcome back to the channel. My name is Cyanide. If you're new to the channel, so I'm giving an extra special welcome. Let you know I'm glad you're here, and I hope you enjoy yourself. But before you begin, you need to scroll down, smash the crap out of the like button, subscribe to this channel, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any videos from me. Otherwise, you may find yourself floating out in the middle of the ocean on your bed, and you might meet Chad over there. I don't think that's what you want. Anyway, on today's video, we're gonna do all the classes in a nutshell. Now, I haven't played all of them, but I know enough about all of them, having seen how they operate, talking to people that have played it that are in my free company, to at least give you a nutshell version of what they're all about. But I have played most of them. So, we're gonna start with the Dark Knight. Well, the Dark Knight, in my opinion, is the most fun tank to play, mainly because it is pretty easy. They're quite robust. They basically do some life leech heals on themselves, which gives them a little bit longer to last in combat. And they have the best oh shit button in the game, in my opinion, because it's only got a 15-second cooldown, so as long as you got the mana, you just click the shit out of that, and it'll basically give you a third of your hit points completely free of damage. So it's quite nice. Plus, who doesn't like to slay their enemies with really cool spell effects that are nice and dark and kind of flashy, if you don't mind it. Now, they don't have any self heals because they have the self leech, but they can actually make do quite well with those. Depending on the circumstances. As an example, Abyssal Drain will actually heal you per target, so the more enemies you have on you, the more you'll heal yourself for. Don't worry though, it is not a prerequisite that you feel depressed and want to kill yourself to play such an edgy character. Next on the list is the Gunbreaker. I know the armor looks the same because it's also 80. Gunbreaker is basically like a little bit fancier tank. They may not feel like they have a lot of mitigation, and they may feel like they take more damage and harder to keep alive, but that's only if you don't use all their abilities. It's a very active tank to play. You have to push a lot of buttons, and as long as you push all those buttons properly, you actually are a really good tank. A lot of their combat skills give them mitigation on top of their cooldowns, so it's important that you make sure you know all your combos and know when to use them. However, their sword is a little laughable and looks kind of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Gay! So use at your own risk. A lot of people like them because they are a very active tank and you don't get very bored. Next on the list, the goody two shoes of the group, the Paladin. Now, the Paladin has quite a strong heal. They like to pretend that they're healers, even though they're really not, but they can solo a lot of fights, but they're really meant for tanking. This is arguably the best tank in the game. Like I said, I would say Dark Knight's still my favorite. These guys know what they're doing when it comes to mitigation and when it comes to healing, being able to heal themselves. But if you use a Dark Knight well, these two are comparable. However, they do have both a melee and a casting combo that they can do, which actually gives them a leg up when it comes to holding aggro over other tanks. But when you see how easy tanking is in this game as far as holding aggro, it doesn't really matter whether you're using a Paladin or a Dark Knight or any of the tanks, because you just click a button. And as long as you're slapping the shit out of something, and guess what? You're not losing aggro to another class. That's just as simple as that. Next up is the warrior with the big dick axe. This thing, I mean, yeah, they do quite a bit of damage, if I'm gonna be honest. I don't like them as much because a lot of their AoEs, or at least a lot of their attacks, are directional or cones. It's a little harder for me to get used to. But they're still good tanks. A lot of people use them. They're definitely good at holding aggro against other tanks simply because they do massive tons of damage. So, if you like to get in the middle of the fray and just beat the shit out of stuff, maybe the warrior is the one for you. Next up, we're gonna get into heals. This is the scholar. Yay, a book. Yes, the scholars and summoners use books in this game, so they have the least impressive weapons. Scholar can be a really good healer, but they can be a little more difficult to get used to. They're a little more active healer because their heals aren't as big dick as the white mage, as an example, but they are heavy on the shields. Everything they do is about shielding pretty much, with a very few exceptions. So you can just stack shields upon shields and heal a whole group and add shields to the whole group and all that. It's also the manipulation of those shields. But the scholar can be a fun healer to play, but be prepared to basically have to use your heals a lot more often. So you got to change the way you think about healing if you're gonna be a scholar healer. Next, the white mage with its freaking tree. But yes, the white mage is actually one of the best healers in the game, in my opinion. In fact, I think it is the best healer in the game. They have massive heals. Their heals do well. They have multiple regenerations, and basically a healer with a gun. Until Endwalker comes and we actually get a healer with a gun. So these actually hit pretty hard. They heal really well, and they're actually pretty fun to play. So I definitely recommend this if you're new to healing. Definitely play a white mage first. You'll find it to be the easiest of the healing classes to play, mainly because they do have those big heals, and you'll find yourself dropping your group members a lot less if you're playing as a white mage to start with. Now, next up is the Astrologian. I have not played the Astrologian yet, but I know people that have. They have pretty good heals, but their biggest utility is the fact that they draw cards and they're able to buff the damage of different different classes or job roles in the party. So they're really a big buff. They're kind of halfway between a white mage and a scholar as far as the actual strength of their heals. And there's a lot of reason to play them. Like I said, they get to play their cards and heal the group, and their cards are great utility, help you do extra damage. And actually, I believe there's some in there that actually help with mitigation as well. So next up, we're starting with physical ranged DPS. I'm gonna go with the Mechanist first. Mechanist is actually my favorite one. It's actually one of the biggest damage dealers in the game. If you're a big fan of big numbers, why not? Plus they have an ability right here, reassemble, that guarantees that your next weapon skill is going to be a crit, and you have 2 of them that do massive big dick damage. So there's no reason not to play a Mechanist if you like to see big numbers pop up everywhere. You know, see the blood of your enemy shower down before you. Plus, you get to summon a mech. Who doesn't want to summon a mech when it comes to physical ranged DPS? The Mechanist, in my opinion, is one of the most fun. Next, you have the Dancer. Now, you may be laughing about the Dancer because it's just a Dancer. However, Dancers not only get to buff themselves, but they get to pick a dance partner. And when they buff themselves, they buff their dance partner at the same time, which can be any class, including them a Mechanist or a Dragoon or something along those lines. What you'll find is that you'll forget. And this is the truth, you will forget that your Dancer is a ranged DPS because you're throwing fucking frisbees, guys, and you'll completely forget that you're supposed to stand at a distance. At least I did for a little while. But especially in the lower levels, lower to mid levels, they have, their basic dance, which is essentially a DDR in the middle of the game, but it does some absolutely broke damage in the beginning to mid levels of the game. It's quite disgusting. So it's definitely worth a try, and they're actually kind of fun. So I definitely recommend everybody play this at least once for a little bit, but they're actually pretty fun. So don't discount them just because you hear the word Dancer. Next, the Bard, and I just hit this level with my Bard. I don't have a lot of skills, but from what I do know about people in my FC that do have Bards, if you like doing plink damage and buffing your party a little bit, but basically, being almost almost useless as a DPS when it compared to other DPS classes. Play the Bard. It's a good range class, I guess. You can buff everybody, but you don't really need a Bard in your group like you used to before some of these more recent range classes come out. But they can still be fun to play. But like I said, everybody that in my free company that's played a Bard, now they'll tell you that they can be fun. You get to play instruments, but they really don't do nearly as much damage, even though they're labeled as a DPS. And they might have to come up with another subclass label in order to throw some of these classes into, because they just don't do damage up to par with the rest. Plus, one of the things about a Bard is a lot of their rotation is dependent on RNG, which means you may or may not have some of your skills that do damage up simply because you rolled the dice and it didn't end up equaling what it needed to equal, basically. And that's part of why their damage can be they can either keep up with other classes or they'll be quite low if your RNG is bad. That's kind of why their damage is not as reliable as some of the other classes. Next up, the Dragoon. The Dragoon is quite a fun class to play. All you gotta do is stand behind the boss, smack some booty cheeks. They do quite a bit of damage. They're very acrobatic. They can be very active. You have long combos especially when you hit the higher levels. And essentially, you can have a combo and keep your abilities going indefinitely if you know how to push the right buttons at the right times. And you can do some really consistent, nice big damage with the Dragoon. And like I said, they start out a little bit slow. You may feel like you're just a guy with a stick poking the shit out of stuff, but as you get higher level, you'll realize that your combos get more sophisticated. You have many more buttons to push, and your combos get longer. So you end up being a little more active on your skill bar than you would think when you're starting out. Next is the Monk. Well, what can I say about the Monk other than the fact that people bitched and moaned about certain abilities or certain skills, mainly the ones that allow you to stack, like Grease Lightning being my favorite. They removed it from the game because people were bitching and moaning about it, but the reality is that's part of what made the class fun. They removed it, and now it's just kind of like, oh, I can do some damage, but I mean, you can have a lobotomy and play this class now too. So I mean, it's just pretty much what it's down to. If you like punching the shit out of stuff with your fists instead of using real weapons, you can play the Monk. At last, the Summoner. And what? Yeah, we'll get to some of the other classes that I don't have yet in just a moment. But the Summoner, this is essentially the DPS branch of the Arcanist. The Scholar is the healer. This is the DPS. An interesting fact, if you play either Summoner or Scholar, when you hit 80 with one, you hit 80 with the other, so it's a good way to level two classes at the same time, one DPS and one healer. I recommend you play the healer because what that does is it allows you to level up a DPS while taking advantage of healer insta-Q when it comes to dungeons. If you like having big dicks on your forehead, as you can see, play the Scholar. Go ahead. Also, if you like trying to play Flight of the Bumblebee on your keyboard, play the Scholar, because when you get to the higher levels, that's essentially what it's like. Is you're constantly pushing buttons, constantly having to get stuff done. And it feels a little bit like playing Flight of the Bumblebee on your keyboard. It's quite active and it can be enjoyable. So if you like being able to constantly press buttons continuously through a fight and have to worry about that and the dodging mechanics, this may be the class for you because it gets quite complicated. Now we're going to go to the Blue Mage last, but before that I'm going to mention there is the Samurai. I have not started the Samurai, but I know the Samurai does quite stupid damage, man. From what I understand, one of my free company mates loves his freaking samurai, and he's level 8 at every class, and it does a lot of damage. You have multiple different combos you can do, different branches coming off, and you've got it can get a little bit complicated, but not overly complicated. And you're just all about shitting on the boss, man. You just take a giant dump on its forehead worth of damage. And so it might be something for you to play if you enjoy that, but you have to hit level 50 and have the appropriate expansions first. But they do start at 50. So it's not like you get the level from level 1. That may be something helpful as well. That's the samurai in the nutshell. Next, we're talking about the ninja. If you like Naruto and Naruto running, which is why I think most people play the ninja, for being 100% realistic, just play the ninja. They do some decent damage. They put this little earthen looking thing on the ground that people are always afraid of. They don't, especially new players that they don't realize is not a boss DPS or boss spell. Kind of look like someone took a giant dump on the ground and just smeared all over everything. But they do some decent damage. They use double daggers. They run like Naruto. They do a little flip jump once in a while. But that's pretty much it. There's nothing really that special about that class, but they do some decent numbers. It might be something you're into. They do use kanji. Well, I call it kanji, but they use hand signals essentially in different combinations in order to make things like fire bursts and stuff like that. So they can get a little complicated when you're trying to memorize what each of the combos do. But as far as damage numbers, I mean, they're kind of middle of the pack, maybe a little upper in the middle of the pack, but they're somewhere in the middle of the pack. So they're definitely a solid DPS class, especially if you enjoy Naruto and you enjoy Naruto running. So the next one is the Black Mage. I don't have a Black Mage yet. Like I said, I'm saving all my casters for last, to be honest. That's the reason my pure casters. But the Black Mage, what can I say about the Black Mage? Well, the Black Mage, I mean, it does really, really, really big damage numbers, man. The only reason it isn't higher on the list of actual DPS classes as far as damage wise is because you do have to spend some time casting some of them, and the fact that you have the boss mechanics kind of cuts into or mitigates your damage a little bit. So it isn't their damage itself that's the issue, it's the fact they have to move, which means your ley lines may be put in the wrong position. You can max out Black Mage DPS if you memorize every single battle of the game, so you know exactly where to place your ley lines so that you don't have to move nearly as much as you think you would have to, because your ley lines boost your damage out and all that stuff. But it's still a very solid class. I'll know a little bit more about it when I play it, but from what I understand, they actually do quite big numbers. And it tends to be just the fact that you have to move around to avoid mechanics that mitigates their damage. The Red Mage. Red Mage is definitely some solid DPS. It's kind of like a Black Mage that can move around a little bit more. As you know, because you have your dual cast and stuff like that, but you can also res. There's only other than the healers, there's only 2 classes that can resurrect other party members. And one would be the Summoner, and the other would be the Red Mage. Red Mage is kind of like a jack of all trades. They do a little bit of melee damage at the end of their combos, or at a certain point in their combos. They need to balance white and black mana in order, energy level, aether, I guess is the best way to explain it. They have to balance that in order to maximize their efficiency and maximize their damage output. But they're a pretty solid class to play, and I know a couple people that have played them and enjoy them. So that leaves us with the Blue Mage. The Blue Mage is an interesting class. It's actually kind of broken. They don't let you go in the dungeons with the rest of the classes. because you'll end up wiping the floor and embarrassing all of them with the blue mage, and that's just a fact, because the blue mage can tank, a blue mage can heal, a blue mage can DPS. But the interesting fact is you don't get your spells just from leveling. You have to go out and get smacked in the fucking face by whatever thing is using that spell in order to learn the spell. And not only do you have to get smacked in the face, you have to kill it. So I guess you could call them the Chad Thundercocks of the game, because they have to not only get beat the shit out of with the spell in order to use it, they have to kill the boss, and then they do more damage than the rest of the classes in the game, simply because they're the blue mage and they have spells that come from bosses of dungeons and come from other mobs. As an example, Self-Destruct has a base of 1500, and that's not even the hardest hitting one. Yes, it kills me, but that's ridiculous. That's massive damage. And that's just one example. There's skills that do that don't kill you, especially when you get to the higher levels. There are some achievements for completing certain dungeons and certain raids using nothing but a party of blue mages. So they can be a lot of fun, but don't be mistaken. They're definitely a unique class, and they will not let you go up to the highest level dungeons. Like, you can't do level 80 raids, you can only do up to level 70. And the reason for that is precisely what I just said, because they are so broken. If they let them go up to 80, it would literally break the rating at level 80. You could just go in there with a group of blue mages and just wipe the floor with any boss, and it wouldn't even be an issue. At least below Savage level anyway. I don't know how it would go at Savage, but it would, like, all you'd have to do is replace your DPS with blue mages, and it would be guaranteed you'd be able to kill whatever the fuck's there. I mean, that's basically how strong that shit is. So that's the blue mage in a nutshell. I definitely recommend everybody play it. It's basically it's basically a giant collection game for your abilities, which actually makes it kind of fun and unique. And you know, it's almost like an entirely different game when you're playing a blue mage, simply because you can't do stuff with the other classes. You can only do stuff with other blue mages. So that is roughly every combat class in a nutshell. Let me know in the comment section what your favorite combat class is. And if you enjoyed this video and it helped you out, please smash the like and share the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your friends. Let us grow and help other people. I hope this was a helpful video for you and allows you to pick your class a little bit more, or pick your class a little easier. But also, before we go, I want to give a shout out to my stream team. First, Killicam, and the link to his YouTube channel will be in the description. And also, Crafty Rob, the link to his channel will be in the description as well. They are my stream team. We game together, we grow together. That's what we do. But also, before we go, I want to let you know that gaming canon should be the great unifier. And the reason why games are the great unifier is because when you're playing a game, it doesn't matter what country you're from, what language you speak. It doesn't matter your skin color, your religion, your sexual orientation, or your gender, or any of that. Because when you're playing the game, you're just playing the game. That's all gamers really give a shit about. And yes, we argue about stupid shit sometimes, but that's it. It's just stupid shit. We don't actually hate each other simply for that stupid shit. And the reality is that the games unify people because it's a way to escape reality. So therefore, gamers canon should be unifiers as well. Don't forget to live your best life. I want you guys to have an outstanding day, and I'll see you in the next one.